Right. Good afternoon, I believe, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Okay, I'm getting the pause. All right. Thank you so much for being here. We're actually here. I'm the chair of the Latino Caucus, Senator Lina Gonzalez, proudly representing the 33rd District, Long Beach, Catalina Island, Southeast Los Angeles. And I'm here with my Latino Caucus colleagues, as well as our Diversity Caucus colleagues, too. And we are here to say no more secrecy, no more to the unsafe and inhumane conditions, no more to the privately run immigration detention facilities avoiding accountability in California and across the country. Our Latino families across California are already living in fear and facing severe disruption because of the cruel and reckless federal immigration actions, some of them U.S. citizens, some of them legal residents, some of them students, children, and we say no more. We have seen parents separated from their children. In fact, ICE has detained more than 650 children in California during President Trump's second term. More than 100 of those children were age 5 and younger. Imagine the fear and trauma these children are living every single day. The ones left behind with their parents deported, the ones that are in the detention centers, living in the most inhumane conditions. And we have seen too many lives lost during ICE encounters as well. In fact, last month, just days of each other, we saw 2 fatal ICE-involved shootings in Texas and Maine, and we mourned the lives of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo and Joan Sebastian Guerrero. And in fact, many of us in the Latino Caucus met with the elected officials in Texas, talking about these very shootings and how terrified they are, even in Texas, of these ICE officials. They were the 29th and 30th people immigration officers had opened fire under with this administration. We condemn these horrific actions in the strongest possible terms. Our communities are outraged, heartbroken, and we demand justice. And perhaps your algorithms are not showing you all of these issues. It's still happening in our communities every single day. Since January 20th, 2025, since Trump took office, 52 people have died in ICE custody nationwide. It's heartbreaking to hear the many stories, such as that reported by Paloma Esquivel, of how people detained in these facilities have resorted to throwing handwritten notes over barbed wire fences. Just think about that, to just let their families know that they're alive. The horrific conditions remain, and in fact, the Latino Caucus requested access to visit the Adelanto ICE Processing Center in California, and to date we have received zero response, no response to our requests. No one in California should have to struggle this hard to be seen, to be heard, protected, and treated with dignity. This is why I am authoring SB 423, the Detention Facility Transparency Act. The bill would amend the California Public Records Act to make 911 and emergency call records from private detention facilities publicly accessible, helping those civil rights violations be exposed. We want to expose them for the abuse and inhumane conditions that might otherwise remain hidden and continue to be ignored by this administration. As the California Legislative Latino Caucus chair and our colleagues will continue to fight until we see an end to these horrific conditions and our communities are treated with dignity. In short, you will hear from my Diversity Caucus colleagues who are here today from the AAPI Caucus, the Black Caucus as well as my other Latino Caucus colleagues that will share more about their legislation that they are advancing to hold private detention operators accountable, and more importantly, to hold this federal government accountable for the atrocities they have placed against our communities. Let's remember that private detention companies receive public dollars, and they have made billions in profit, with an increase of 13% in revenues just last year. Core Civic generated an estimated $1.1 billion with the sale of 2 private detention centers to Homeland Security. $1.1 billion. And so yes, they must be held accountable. Federal ownership, private contracts, and detention center walls should never be allowed to be used to hide dangerous conditions from public scrutiny or silence people who have experienced mistreatment. No more secrecy. We demand accountability now. So with that, I will invite my colleague up from the AAPI Caucus, the chair of the caucus, Assemblymember Mike Fong, an incredible colleague. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And thank you so much to the Madam Chair and the Latino Caucus for organizing this event. And I'm Senator Mike Fong, very honored to serve as chair of the AAPI Legislative Caucus. And thank you so much to the Chair Gonzalez and the Latino Legislative Caucus for your leadership in organizing today's press conference, bringing attention to the conditions within California's federally and privately owned immigration detention centers. And today we are here to join the Latino Caucus to say no more secrecy and that inhumane conditions must end. I join my colleagues in calling for greater accountability, transparency, and oversight of our immigration detention system. And we know that it's been a challenging time the last couple of years. And we know that our communities, including asylum seekers, survivors of conflict, persecution, and individuals who have come to this country seeking safety, freedom, and opportunity. And now with this, everything that's happening in our immigration system that's marked by uncertainty and fear, and reports of prolonged detention, barriers to legal representation, and insufficient transparency within detention centers, the horrible conditions there, and just the LA Times had an article on just the water issues there as well, just raising serious concerns about the treatment of individuals in custody. And regardless of immigration status, every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And the California AAPI Legislative Caucus stands in strong solidarity with the California Latino Legislative Caucus and my colleagues up here in supporting efforts to establish a statewide task force to examine detention centers, to strengthen oversight, and provide recommendations that ensure California continues to uphold the highest standards of accountability and human dignity. And today and every day, we stand with our immigrant communities across California to continue working towards a more just immigration system for greater transparency, oversight, and accountability. Thank you so much again to Chair Gonzalez and the Latino Caucus for bringing us together and for your leadership.
Next, we have the one of the incredible members, Vice Chair of the Black Caucus, the Black Legislative Caucus. We have our good Assembly member, Isaac Bryan from Los Angeles.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank my colleagues in the Latino Caucus for their leadership on these issues. I'm here because when human rights are being violated, when people are losing their lives unjustly in detention facilities and on our streets, that is not just a Latino issue. That is a human issue. That is a Black issue. That is a California issue. That should be an American issue. A lot of people believe that the violence coming out of the federal government has ended for some reason. It has not. It has only escalated, and the people who know that the most are frontline communities, our vulnerable communities, our undocumented communities, or anybody who is Black and brown walking these streets, because we know how they are continuing to profile. And while we've put legislation on the table to hold ICE agents accountable, to unmask ICE agents, to stop our local law enforcement from moonlighting as ICE agents, what we haven't done enough of is holding these private detention facilities accountable. More people have died in the last 12 months in detention facilities, private detention facilities ran by the federal government, than at any point in American history. Human rights violations are happening every single day, and the consequences are lethal. And that is why the legislation being introduced today is so important. We have to hold these facilities accountable. We have to push to the furthest extent of California law to increase transparency. And we have to do all we can to push these private detention facilities out of our state. Make no mistake, these ideas didn't come from us. They came from community. They came from the protesters outside Adelanto. They came from the communities that are directly impacted. They came from the children whose parents have been stolen from them and the children themselves who have been kidnapped by ICE agents. These are their ideas. And I want to thank my colleagues in the Latino Caucus for bringing these ideas into policy shape. The Black Caucus stands in strong solidarity, and we've got to put these bills on the governor's desk. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Masi Fuladi, Executive Director for the California Immigrant Policy Center.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Gonzalez and the entire Latino Caucus leadership for bringing us here today. My name is Masi Fuladi, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Immigrant Policy Center. We are here today because of a value that shouldn't be controversial. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and have the right to due process and basic safety no matter where they were born. Right now, people are being detained and are dying in dangerous, overcrowded, and unsanitary immigrant detention facilities where delays in medical care are routine. And here in California, that suffering has a price tag. Private for-profit companies operate detention facilities in our state and are generating hundreds of millions in revenue every year. Since last April, the number of people detained in California facilities has more than doubled, from around 3,100 to nearly 6,800 people on any given day. Nationally, private detention operators reported $2 billion in profits last year alone. The CEOs of these companies are celebrating. One of them said, this is the most exciting period of his career. Another called it an unprecedented opportunity. And here's the human cost these corporations are inflicting. 6 people, Ismael Ayala Urbin, Hua Bing Zi, Gabriel Garcia Aviles, Luis Beltran Yanez Cruz, Alberto Gutierrez Reyes, and Jose Guadalupe Ramos Solano died in California detention facilities this past year. None of that is by accident. It is the predictable result of a system where private corporations profit from every person they detain, and where the more people they detain, the more money is made. That is not justice. That is not public safety. That is profiteering off of human suffering. You'll hear from our colleagues today about efforts to bring greater transparency and accountability to these facilities, licensing, inspection, and public records. That work matters and we support it. And we also advance demands for oversight and accountability of for-profit detention facilities. We must also advance accountability for the profits private corporations are making from mass detention and family separation. That's why CIPC is proud to co-sponsor 2 first-in-the-nation bills that seek to use our state's tax code and to hold private detention facilities accountable for the harm they cause our families and communities. AB 2465, authored by Latino Caucus Vice Chair, Assemblymember Ortega, which says California's taxpayer dollars, our grants, our loans, and our tax credits will not subsidize a company that profits from tearing families apart. And AB 1633, authored by Assemblymember Haney, which would tax private detention companies and reinvest those dollars in the communities that they have harmed. Let's be clear about what these bills represent. Nothing like them exists anywhere else in the country. AB 2465 would be the first law in the nation to cut off state dollars for companies that profit from mass detention and deportation. AB 1633 would be the first tax of its kind on private detention industry anywhere in the United States. California has the chance to lead the nation again and do what's right. No company should profit from suffering of our families and neighbors. California has the power to say no, clearly and unequivocally. We're asking the legislature to stand with the Latino Caucus, Assembly Members Ortega, Haney, Senator Gonzalez, and with the immigrant communities across California to support the legislation you'll hear about today, because cutting off the profit of these corporations and holding them accountable for these facilities must happen now. Thank you, and CIPC stands ready to work with the Latino Caucus, the AAPI Caucus, and the Black Caucus to get this done today. Thank you.
Next, we have Jackie Gonzalez, Co-Executive Director for the Immigrant Defense Advocates.
Good morning. I want to thank the Latino Caucus, our legislative champions, directly impacted community members, attorneys, organizers, and everyone who has refused to let the walls of private detention facilities become walls of silence. We all know the conditions inside these facilities are terrible. We've heard about medical neglect, contaminated food and water, mold, unsafe working conditions, retaliation, prolonged detention, and people being treated as sources of profit rather than as human beings. But today, I want to focus on what becomes possible when directly impacted people, advocates, public officials like the ones here today work together with discipline and purpose. California has already shown what we can do with our power through collective action. In 2020, California passed AB 3228, a bill that required private detention operators to comply with the standards of care and confinement written into their own government contracts. It created a pathway for people that were harmed in those facilities to bring lawsuits in California state courts. That matters because private detention companies have long benefited, as we've heard today, from secrecy and from the enormous imbalance of power between corporations and individuals locked inside facilities. AB 3228 helped to change that equation. When people inside document denial of medical care, unsafe conditions, and other abuses, those accounts matter more than to just describe what happened to them. Paired with legal advocacy, they become evidence, support litigation, and they establish accountability in our courts. We saw the same collective power of the state through the COVID-19 pandemic. At a time when outbreaks were spreading through detention facilities like wildfire, the federal government had no clear plan for California Immigrants inside spoke out. Families, advocates, health experts, and legislators like the one standing behind me today pushed back. California became one of the first states in the nation to use our own supply to save immigrants' lives in detention. That victory certainly did not solve the cruelty of detention because a vaccine is not freedom. But public health protection should never substitute for release. What this campaign did establish is one essential principle, and it's that California's responsibility to protect the health and safety of people in these detention centers does not disappear just because a private operator runs them or because the federal government has custody of the individual. AB 26 built on that same principle. It clarified private detention operators must comply with California's public health orders and occupational safety and health regulations. That clarity opened the door so that people who were laboring at the Golden State Annex for $1 a day, cleaning dangerous conditions, mold, contaminated areas without any proper protective equipment or any safety and labor rights could push back. After years of resistance, that investigation just this summer in California produced a landmark settlement, more than $100,000 in penalties against the private operator. The operator argued that people could work for it, clean for it, and maintain that facility while somehow remaining outside of the bounds of California's workplace safety laws. And California said no. Then came SB 1132, which clarified that county and city health officers in our state can investigate health and sanitary conditions in private detention facilities when necessary. Again, the approach has been focused and it has been lawful. California did not attempt to take over federal immigration policy. It exercised and will continue to exercise the authority it already has to protect its people. All of these victories are rooted in the same foundation. As many have said here today, they begin with the voices and the courage of people inside these facilities. They're built through coalitions, and they are made possible by legislators who partner with these individuals and with communities. That is the lesson that California must carry forward today. We need laws that stand on firm legal ground, reach the people intended to protect, and give public agencies, attorneys, and communities tools that they can use. The measure of success is not how forceful a bill sounds on the day it is introduced in the legislature. The measure is whether a person inside can obtain medical care, whether they can report abuse without retaliation, whether they can work without being exposed to dangerous conditions, whether they can speak to an attorney. California cannot control every decision made in Washington, but we control what happens in our state. That is why Immigrant Defense Advocates is proud to be co-sponsoring so many of the wonderful measures you will hear today. Already, thank you to Senator Gonzalez for SB 423 to make emergency call records public, SB 942 to enact a civil detainee bill of rights that guarantees basic health, sanitation, food, and human dignity. Thank you to Senator Caballero. SB 1399 to permanently maintain oversight and public reporting over immigration detention facilities. Thank you to Senator Durazo. SB 941 to stop corporate price gouging by capping commissary prices in private detention centers. Thank you to Senator Padilla. And SB 1194 to establish a permanent legal fellowship that trains and places immigration attorneys in underserved communities to ensure that people facing deportation have the most basic guarantee to due process. Taken in sum, these measures remind me of the words of Amilcar Cabral. Always bear in mind that people are not fighting for ideas, for things in anyone's head. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. Ultimately, that's why people come to California. Immigrants don't risk everything for abstract promises. They come to build a life, to work, to live in peace, and to secure a future for their families. When California steps up to protect people in civil detention, we are honoring that fundamental human pursuit. We are choosing oversight over secrecy, enforcement over impunity, and human dignity over profit. Now more than ever, we must push this work forward with courage, precision, and an unwavering commitment to the people whose lives are at stake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And we do have one of the authors here to close this out. We have Senator Sasha Renee Perez, author of Senate Bill 995, the Masuma Khan Justice Act.
Thank you all for being with us here today. I'm Senator Sasha Renee Perez and very proud to be the author of SB 995, the Masuma Khan Justice Act. This bill was written and inspired by the story of Masuma Khan. Masuma Khan is a fire survivor from Altadena. She was detained during her immigration check-in appointment, which she has been regularly attending for years. She has no criminal record, and while she was held in California City's detention center, she was denied access to her attorney, she was denied access to medical care, and she was provided old moldy food as well as water that was clearly very dirty. I'm sure many of you have seen recently the videos that have come out of Adelanto Detention Center. These are regular issues that we are seeing inside of these detention facilities. SB 995 seeks to create an oversight and compliance framework here at the state level, allowing for California's Department of Public Health to be able to enter into these facilities to ensure that they are meeting basic public health and public safety standards. This is the bare minimum that these facilities should be meeting. We have companies like Geo Group, companies like Core Civic that have essentially been profiting off of human suffering. We have heard so many stories from all across the state of individuals being denied their basic human rights and being denied access to critical health care. As I mentioned before in Masuma Khan's story, she almost suffered a medical emergency if it was not for her daughter Ria forcing the facility to provide her with a doctor, to provide her with medical attention. I don't know if Masuma Khan would be here with us today. And that is the tragedy that so many individuals in these facilities are facing. We've been very excited to see this bill gain such tremendous support from all of the members that you see here today, as well as from other members of other caucuses. We've received bipartisan support on this measure because I think what we've begun to recognize is regardless of where you may stand politically, these are human rights abuses that are happening in these facilities. And as everyday people, we have to stand up for one another. We have to stand up for human rights. And that's what this piece of legislation is about today. So we're very excited to see it be pulled out. We're hoping from Assembly Appropriations Committee and heading to the Assembly floor. We know the family, the Khan family has been such huge advocates for this bill. Masuma Khan herself has gone and reached out to people that she met inside of California City's detention center, introduced them to our office because she wants them to know that there's hope, that California is going to do everything in their power to try to take action to hold these places accountable. And that's what we are doing here today. So I thank everyone for being here. Let's get these bills passed and let's do something about these horrific actions that we're seeing across the state.
Thank you to Senator Perez. And I think we have concluded at this time. We do have two other bills that were mentioned by Senator Maria Elena Durazo, SB 1399, Investigative Framework for Detention Centers, as well as Senator Ana Caballero, SB 942, which is the Bill of Rights for Detainees. The Latino Caucus doesn't mess around. We have left no stone uncovered. We have been working just diligently with our diversity caucus members. I'm so grateful to our AAPI caucus chair, Assemblymember Fong, and our vice chair and chair, both Senator Akila Weber and Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, for their incredible support. We cannot do this without them and without the support of so many stakeholders that are in the trenches right now, talking directly to detainees, giving us the information that we need to be able to legislate in a way that makes the most sense and fights back for our Californians. Whether they're detained or not, they're still Californians. They still deserve the respect and dignity that they should have been receiving in the first place. And not to mention, over 650 children, once again, have been detained under the Trump administration in California detention centers. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions if there are any, but if not, we just thank you as well for your time.
Yeah, can you talk about, I think there's been some trouble in terms of like federal facilities, states trying to enforce rules in federal facilities, whether it's lawsuits against those bills. Is this something you're anticipating? How will you deal with that?
Well, we are very close with the Attorney General. I think the Latino Caucus has met with them a handful of times already. He has been incredibly supportive of a lot of the bills that you see here. For example, SB 423 to capture the, or amend the Public Records Act and capture those 911 calls. we're placing that responsibility on the local agencies, the counties, the cities, the departments, to be able to get that information, which shouldn't conflict with federal law. But we're doing as much as we can. We've been in lawsuits before. I think the Attorney General now has about 50 lawsuits, most of which are immigration related. The Trump administration is no stranger to our lawsuits in California, so we will continue to push on that front, and whatever comes our way, we'll go around it. We've added additional components to the supremacy clause, obviously, with that issue, and adding state and local officials, and so we've been working diligently through all of those for workarounds that make sense.
Do you think the state has the authority to set these rules on federal facilities?
I do to some degree, but I don't know if there's any other additional information that you'd like to add.
I think one of the things that's important to mention is that we already actually have a state law that allows for counties to be able to do oversight of these facilities. It was a Durazo bill that was passed several years ago. I can't remember the number at this time, but recently Otay Mesa Detention Center, which is located in San Diego County, they sued for the right to be able to enter this detention facility so that their Department of Public Health can do oversight. And the court upheld that and said that they do have the right to enter that facility. So I think that lawsuit itself proves that we have the ability to be able to provide oversight of these privately run detention centers, right? These are corporations that are operating inside of our state, and we do have some oversight and accountability here.
On the statewide task force that someone mentioned, can you expand on the implementation, the framework of that?
In terms of the statewide framework, that's something that we're going to be working with our colleagues on in terms of the package of legislation in AAPI caucus, along with the Latino caucus. In terms of bill packages last year and this year, immigrant rights issues, these are issues that we're going to continue to work on and uplift, and so the statewide framework is what I was trying to reference there.
All right, so would that be something that legislators, you are all planning on conducting these oversight visits, or would that be a separate?
Well, we have, as mentioned, the Latino Caucus sent a letter about a month ago to the Adelanto Processing Center. I believe we may have sent 2 letters. We also connected with our Congress members in our respective districts to be able to help us to kind of get in, and 0 response, absolutely no response. In fact, Vice Chair Juan Carrillo, who's the representative of Adelanto, had a contact, was not able to get in there either. So we have tried, we've talked to Chirla and of course our stakeholder groups to be able to see, we're just getting information from them, but just to see what we can do to get in. But what we would love to do, with that, we would love to bring that information back, and as been mentioned, if that means a task force or some sort of oversight hearings to be able to conduct based on these bills that we've put forward on the detention centers, we're going to continue to do that and be committed to that, absolutely. We do have 2 other members here that had just come in who would like to talk about their bills. If they would like to say a few words, please. I have Senator Caballero. We did a little bit. Go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for being here today. My name is Ana Caballero. I represent the 14th Senate District, which includes Fresno, Madera, and Merced. And recently, a Fresno woman in my district walked into a scheduled hearing at the immigration appointment, and she believed she was doing what the authorities told her to do, and that was what the law required her to do. She showed up, she answered questions honestly, and she followed the process. Yet she was detained by ICE, separated from her family, and taken to a detention facility. She had no criminal record. She was a mother, a long-time 25-year California resident, and a taxpayer. She had worked during that entire time, and she had permission to work from the immigration authorities. Her children are pursuing higher education, and they are pursuing the American dream. She did what we asked people to do, which is to follow the rules. But at that moment, none of it mattered. She was treated as a target, and sadly, her story is not unique. Across California, families working to comply with the immigration process face fear, separation, and uncertainty. Many end up inside locked civil detention facilities where they depend entirely on the facility operators for food, water, medical care, and protection from harm. You have to understand they get there and there's no way for them to communicate with their family members. No one tells them what's happened to them. They are held incommunicado, and so for a long period of time, her children, who are college age and high school students, had no idea where she was and what was happening to her. And let me be clear, no human being should be detained for profit. No amount of oversight makes mass detention just. But while people are held inside these facilities, sometimes for years, I want to emphasize that, sometimes for years, California has a responsibility to ensure that they are treated with dignity and humanity. And that's why I introduced SB 942, which creates California Civil Detainees Bill of Rights. More than 6,000 people are currently held in California's privately operated for-profit immigration detention facilities. They are not serving sentences for criminal offenses. They are waiting for civil immigration proceedings that can take months or years. California already recognizes that people held in state civil detention facilities retain fundamental rights. Those same protections should not disappear simply because someone is detained for immigration purposes. SB 942 guarantees basic rights that most of us take for granted: dignity, privacy, humane care, prompt medical, dental, and mental health treatment, religious freedom, physical exercise, recreation, clean drinking water, safe food, functioning toilets and showers, clean living conditions, and freedom from unnecessary restraint, isolation, abuse, or neglect. Think about that. Is any of that unreasonable? The answer is absolutely not. It's what we expect if people are being civilly detained, waiting for a hearing. These are not special privileges, they are basic standards of treatment. Last year was the deadliest year in more than 2 decades for people in ICE custody, and with 32 confirmed deaths. Government investigations have repeatedly documented dangerous conditions inside these facilities that contributed to preventable illness, injury, and sometimes death. The bill also provides meaningful enforcement by authorizing the California Attorney General to bring civil actions when these rights are violated and to seek court orders, equitable relief, and civil penalties when appropriate. The bill is not an endorsement of detention. It is a recognition that every civilly detained person in California deserves to be treated with dignity. And the woman from my district, while she was reunited with her family, it happened because the community stood up. It stood up for her and talked about how important she was to the family and the fact that she had been complying with every single request from immigration authorities and that she was trying her best to comply when she showed up for her appointment. Now it's California's turn to speak up. We will stand for dignity, for accountability, and we will affirm the basic human rights upon which we expect our civil detainees to be held, whether you're born in the country or not. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for all that you do to have people understand exactly what's going on as we work to protect the rights of all Californians, no matter where you come from. Now I'd like to introduce Senator Maria Elena Durazo next.
Thank you very much. I'm so proud to be here standing with my colleagues in the Latino Caucus to say no more secrecy. For too long, the federal administration has led a campaign of hate, and they do it in plain sight, without shame, without accountability. But what's worse is what happens behind closed doors in these disgusting for-profit detention facilities. inhumane, unsafe conditions. No one should be in these facilities. We demand greater transparency and continue to hold these private, for-profit detention facilities accountable. This administration has made clear they will allow private detention companies to take on a government duty and function, but without oversight or accountability. In my district in East Los Angeles, Boyle Heights, and other neighborhoods, families have been forced to live in fear, and they've been doing this for years. That's why I've worked hard since my first year to hold the facilities accountable. In 2019, I passed SB 398 to protect people with disabilities in these facilities. In 2021, I passed 334 to require detention centers to uphold basic health and safety standards. In 2024, I passed SB 1132, giving counties the authority to conduct independent public health inspections of private detention facilities. This bill was challenged immediately in court, has remained at the center of many legal battles on local county enforcement. Time and time again, the courts have affirmed that every person, regardless of immigration status, is entitled to dignity and just treatment. In June of this year, a federal judge ordered the Department of Homeland Security to allow San Diego County health officials to inspect the Otay Mesa detention facility. That is a win. This year, I am continuing the fight with SB 1399, which permanently codifies the existing oversight for the Attorney General to inspect and publicly report on conditions inside. It's disgraceful that we have to fight this hard just to make sure these facilities treat our people with basic dignity and respect. As a state with the largest immigration community in the country, California has an ethical and moral obligation to lead the protection of our neighbors and colleagues. We will keep leading, we will keep organizing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes our press conference. I don't know if there's any other questions. We'll take one more, if anything. Yes.
Yeah, we wanted to clarify about exactly which detention centers this would apply to, because you mentioned private detention centers and 2 abuse detention centers were bought by DHS this summer.
You mean in all of the bills, or are there any specific bills, or just all of the bills? Well, we would hope this applies to every single one of them. In fact, there's 8 detention centers across 4 counties. They have about 8,900 in capacity. And so, you know, again, we are using every tool, whether that's through the Attorney General's office, whether it's through our lower courts, whether it's through our connections with our, you know, local agencies, through legislation, through regulation. We will continue. This is just the beginning of this package for detention centers. Just the beginning to shine light on what next, which is more transparency from the Trump administration, which is ensuring that there are enshrined with these detention centers basic rights to safe drinking water has been mentioned, to health care, and to ensure that they actually have, you know, we actually know where these detainees are headed. So we would hope that these bills would apply to all, regardless of what the federal government does. They're going to continue to buy up real estate, is what the plan is what I'm told. But it's not fair, as been mentioned, that $1.1 to $2 billion has been made in profits. That is absolutely abhorrent. Not just immoral, but it is unethical for this Trump administration to do that to our Californian communities, and it is just absolutely abhorrent. And so, like I said, whatever has been thrown at us, we've been throwing it right back, and we will continue to do that. I think the next phase will be oversight, continued engagement, especially with the new administration coming in next year. There'll be new folks in the governor's office, and so we look forward to working with whoever that governor is to be able to make sure that there's more light being shone on these issues for our communities. With that, I want to say thank you so much, and I hope you all just keep reporting on this issue. We all really appreciate, on behalf of the Latino Caucus and the Diversity Caucuses, we just really appreciate you shining light on these issues that are so very important to every single one of our communities. Again, like I said, the algorithms might tell you differently, but people are still being detained, they're still being thrown into detention centers, and they're still living in abhorrent conditions. So thank you very much.
Si se puede.
Thank you.